Stand up right now and apologize to my son for your sabotage or clean out your desk. Richard Thornfield's voice cut through the boardroom like a blade, his finger pointing directly at me across the mahogany table. The 15 board members and senior staff sat in dead silence, waiting for my response. Austin Thornfield, Richard's 28-year-old son and our newly promoted operations director, smirked from his chair beside the executive team. My name is Nathan Bradley. I'm 52 years old, and that moment proved my 18 years as senior engineering manager at Meridian Defense Solutions meant nothing to the Thornfield family. Let me back up and tell you how this whole mess started 6 months ago. Back then, I ran the engineering department with a team of 12 solid engineers. We specialized in manufacturing processes for defense contracts, and I knew every bolt, every specification, every safety protocol by heart. After serving 8 years in the Navy and working my way up from the shop floor, I'd earned respect through actual work, not family connections. Then Richard hired his son, Austin. First day on the job, Austin rolled up in a brand new BMW M5 wearing a custom suit that cost more than most of my guys made in a month. He had an MBA from Wharton and exactly 0 real-world engineering experience. According to Richard, Austin was there to modernize our operations and bring innovative cost management to an aging workforce. Red flag number 1, but I figured every boss's kid deserves a chance to prove themselves. Nathan, you'll be mentoring Austin, Richard announced during our department meeting. Show him our processes. He's got some fresh ideas about optimizing efficiency. Austin's first fresh idea was cutting our materials testing protocols by 50% to accelerate production schedules. When I explained that defense contracts require specific safety certifications, he waved me off. Look, Nate, I understand you're comfortable with traditional methods, but we need to embrace lean manufacturing principles. My father expects measurable improvements, not status quo thinking. That's when I realized we had a serious problem. This wasn't just nepotism. This was dangerous nepotism applied to military equipment manufacturing. The real trouble started 3 months later when we landed the Blackwater defense contract. Worth $200 million over 3 years, it was the biggest deal in our company's 25-year history. The contract specified manufacturing vehicle armor plating using 4130 chromoly steel with specific heat treatment requirements and ballistic testing standards. Austin was assigned to lead the cost analysis phase while I handled technical specifications. His initial reports showed production costs 35% lower than my engineering assessments. When I questioned the numbers, he got defensive. Maybe you're not seeing the optimization opportunities here, Nate. I've identified several process improvements that could save us millions while maintaining quality standards. I reviewed his analysis that evening. Austin had systematically replaced 4130 chromoly steel specifications with 7075 T6 aluminum alloy, eliminated heat treatment cycles, and reduced ballistic testing from 3 samples per batch to 1 sample per production run. These weren't optimizations. They were fundamental alterations that would produce armor plating 40% weaker than contract requirements. Austin, these changes violate basic metallurgy principles. Aluminum alloy can't provide the ballistic protection that chromoly steel delivers. Soldiers will die if this equipment fails in combat. That's your interpretation. My analysis shows aluminum can meet performance requirements at significant cost savings. My father agrees we need to think strategically about profit margins. I scheduled an emergency meeting with Richard the next morning. Nathan, I appreciate your concerns, but Austin has identified legitimate opportunities for improvement. His cost projections show we can increase profit margins by 28% while delivering a product that meets all essential requirements. I spread the technical specifications across his desk. Richard, these aren't improvements. These are material substitutions that will fail Pentagon inspection and violate federal contract terms. We'll face criminal fraud charges if we submit equipment that doesn't match approved specifications. Richard leaned back in his leather chair. I think you're being overly conservative. Austin has advanced business training from one of the top MBA programs in the country. He understands strategic considerations that pure engineering perspectives might miss. I understand that aluminum melts at 1220 degrees Fahrenheit, while chromoly steel maintains structural integrity until 2500 degrees. No MBA program changes basic physics. Richard's expression hardened. Nathan, I'm going to say this once. Austin represents the future direction of this company. If you can't adapt to new methodologies, then perhaps it's time to consider whether you're the right fit for our evolving organization. The threat was clear: accept Austin's dangerous modifications or find another job. Over the following 2 months, things escalated rapidly. Austin started attending my engineering meetings uninvited, contradicting my technical assessments in front of my team. He'd send emails to Pentagon procurement officials with revised specifications, copying me as if I'd approved the changes. When federal inspectors asked technical questions during site visits, Austin would defer to me, then later blame any confusion on my unclear communication style. 3 of my best engineers, Jordan Reed, Amanda Foster, and Charles Manning, requested transfers to other departments. Not because they'd lost confidence in my abilities, but because Austin had made it clear that association with resistant personnel would impact their career advancement opportunities. My team shrank from 12 engineers to 9, while Austin's influence expanded throughout the organization. The breaking point came during preparation for the major Pentagon compliance review scheduled for November 15th. I'd spent 2 weeks documenting why Austin's material substitutions would compromise safety and violate contract specifications. The night before our presentation, I was working late when I heard voices from the main conference room. "Dad, what happens if the Pentagon asks technical questions I can't answer tomorrow?" "Don't worry, Austin. I've already briefed the procurement team that Nathan has been resistant to efficiency improvements. If there are any technical issues during the presentation, we'll frame them as his failure to provide adequate documentation support." I stopped outside the conference room door and activated my phone's recording function. But what if they want to see the original engineering specifications? Nathan's original specifications reflect outdated, overly conservative approaches that would make us non-competitive. Your analysis demonstrates we can meet all critical requirements while improving profitability. Trust me, after tomorrow's presentation, you'll be leading this entire department. That conversation changed everything. This wasn't incompetence or even standard corporate politics. This was deliberate fraud, and they were planning to destroy my career to cover their tracks. Time to fight back. That conversation changed everything. I wasn't just dealing with incompetence anymore. I was looking at deliberate fraud, and they were planning to pin it all on me. I started documenting everything the next morning. Every email, every meeting, every conversation. I kept backup copies of all original engineering reports and compared them with Austin's modified versions. The differences were staggering. He'd systematically altered material specifications, eliminated crucial safety tests, and reduced inspection requirements across 23 different contract items. The most dangerous change involved the vehicle armor plating. My original specifications called for 4130 chromoly steel with Rockwell hardness of 2832 HRC after heat treatment. Austin's version substituted 7075 T6 aluminum with no hardness requirements. The aluminum would provide approximately 60% less ballistic protection than required steel plating. Soldiers would die if this equipment failed in combat. But I needed more than technical documentation. I needed proof of criminal intent. The Pentagon compliance review was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Richard announced that Austin would present our cost analysis to the federal procurement team. I wasn't invited to attend. "Austin will handle the technical presentation," Richard informed me during our Monday morning meeting. "Your role is to provide documentation support if requested. Richard, the Pentagon team will have specific questions about metallurgy, stress analysis, and ballistic testing protocols. Austin doesn't have the engineering background to answer those technical inquiries. He has my complete confidence. That should be sufficient." I understood the setup. They were positioning Austin to fail during the presentation, then blame me for inadequate technical support. Classic scapegoat strategy. That evening, I stayed late again. Sure enough, Richard and Austin were in the conference room preparing for Tuesday's presentation. I positioned myself outside the door with my phone ready. "Just follow the presentation outline," Richard was instructing. "If they ask technical questions you can't answer, explain that Nathan was responsible for engineering briefings but failed to provide comprehensive documentation." What if they want to see the original specifications? There are no original specifications. Nathan's analysis was incomplete and overly conservative for modern manufacturing standards. Your cost optimization study represents our official engineering position. I had it all recorded. But something Eric Daniels from IT Security told me the next day made the situation much worse. "Nate, we need to talk." Not here at the office. Can you meet me at Murphy's Diner on Route 9 tonight at 8? Murphy's was a 24-hour truck stop 15 miles from the office. Eric was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back corner booth with a laptop bag and a concerned expression. "We have a serious problem," he said without preamble. "Richard has been monitoring your computer activity, your emails, your phone calls from the office. He's been building a surveillance file on you for the past 2 months. Eric opened his laptop and showed me activity logs. My stomach dropped as I saw the extent of the monitoring. Every document I'd accessed, every email I'd sent, every phone call I'd made from my office extension, all logged and tracked. How is this legal? Technically, company equipment allows for monitoring. But here's the concerning part." He clicked to another screen. "Madison Thornfield has been recording conversations throughout the building. Not just casual workplace discussions, formal meetings, private phone calls, confidential discussions with other employees. The screen showed a directory of audio files organized by date and participant names. My name appeared in dozens of entries. This goes beyond normal corporate surveillance. Madison has been systematically collecting information on anyone Richard considers a potential threat, including Patricia Caldwell, our primary investor." "What kind of information on Patricia? Financial records, private communications, details about her investment strategy. Richard's been building leverage files on the entire board of directors." I stared at the surveillance data. This wasn't just nepotism or fraud. This was systematic corporate espionage designed to maintain control through blackmail and intimidation. "Eric, why are you showing me this? Because you're not the first target. Over the past 3 years, Richard has systematically pushed out 4 other senior managers who questioned his decisions. He replaces experienced personnel with family loyalists, then uses surveillance data to control anyone who objects to his methods. What happened to the other managers? Thomas Anderson from Quality Control was forced out after Richard discovered personal financial problems and threatened to report them to federal security clearance authorities. Lisa Martinez from Procurement quit after Madison recorded her complaining about Austin's inexperience. Then Richard threatened to sue her for creating a hostile work environment." Eric closed the laptop. "Richard doesn't just fire people who oppose him. He destroys their careers and ensures they can't find work elsewhere in the defense industry. What do you want me to do? Fight back. But you'll need more than engineering reports and recorded conversations. You'll need someone with enough influence to challenge Richard directly." That's when Eric told me about Patricia Caldwell's background. She wasn't just our biggest investor. She was a former Pentagon procurement officer with 15 years' experience in defense contract oversight. More importantly, she maintained active security clearances and ongoing relationships throughout the Pentagon procurement system. Patricia has been asking questions about our recent performance metrics. She's noticed discrepancies between reported costs and actual deliverables. I think she suspects something is wrong, but she doesn't have concrete evidence. Can you arrange a meeting? Already done. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. at Riverside Coffee downtown. She thinks you're briefing her on technical specifications for her investment review. I drove home that night with my head spinning. Richard's operation was more sophisticated and dangerous than I'd realized. He wasn't just covering up Austin's incompetence. He was running a systematic scheme to defraud the Pentagon while eliminating anyone who might expose the truth. But now I had allies. Eric controlled the IT security systems. Patricia had Pentagon connections, and I had documented evidence of fraud. The next 48 hours would determine whether we could stop this conspiracy or whether Richard would succeed in destroying all of us. Time to find out if experience and integrity could beat surveillance and blackmail. Patricia Caldwell wasn't what I expected. At 58, she looked more like a retired college professor than a major defense contractor investor. But when she studied my engineering documentation at Riverside Coffee the next afternoon, her questions revealed the sharp mind of someone who understood both Pentagon procurement and corporate fraud. "Nathan, these material substitutions aren't just cost-cutting measures. They're systematic contract violations that could result in federal criminal charges." She compared Austin's modified specifications with my original reports. If these altered specifications were submitted to Pentagon procurement, we're looking at conspiracy to defraud the government. Richard believes he can control the investigation through surveillance and pressure tactics. He's miscalculated. I maintain active relationships throughout Pentagon procurement. More importantly, I've been monitoring concerning trends in this company's performance metrics for the past 6 months. Patricia pulled out her own folder. Delivery schedules have slipped 23% since Austin joined the organization. Quality control reports show increasing deviation from contract specifications. Most troubling, our profit margins have increased while our actual material costs should be rising due to inflation. You think Richard's been manipulating financial reports beyond just the Blackwater contract? I think this fraud extends much deeper than material substitutions on a single contract. She handed me a financial analysis. Austin's efficiency improvements have supposedly saved $2.3 million across 8 different Pentagon contracts over the past 4 months. That level of cost reduction is impossible without compromising quality or violating specifications. The numbers were damning. No legitimate engineering improvements could generate those savings without fundamental changes to materials, processes, or safety protocols. Patricia, what do you need from me? Complete documentation of all specification changes, recorded evidence of criminal intent, and testimony from other employees who've witnessed this fraud. Can you provide those? I have recorded conversations between Richard and Austin planning to blame me for their specification violations. Eric Daniels has documented their surveillance operation. But we'll need more than just my word against theirs. Leave that to me. I have contacts who can arrange for an unannounced Pentagon compliance audit, but we need to be prepared for Richard's counterattack. That's when Patricia explained Richard's leverage strategy. He'd been collecting compromising information on board members, investors, and senior staff for years. Financial difficulties, personal problems, professional disputes, anything that could be used for blackmail or character assassination. He has files on everyone, including me. Financial records from my divorce, details about my consulting contracts, even personal communications with Pentagon contacts. Richard's prepared to destroy anyone who threatens his operation. Then how do we stop him? We get federal authorities involved before he can deploy his blackmail files. Once criminal investigators start asking questions, Richard's leverage becomes worthless. He can't blackmail federal agents. Patricia's plan was simple but risky. She'd contact her Pentagon procurement friends and request an immediate compliance audit of the Blackwater contract. Federal investigators would discover the specification violations and demand explanations. When Richard tried to blame me for the discrepancies, we'd present our evidence of his fraud conspiracy. The key is timing. Richard plans to announce Austin's promotion to engineering director at next Tuesday's board meeting. That's when he'll also announce your reassignment to advisory status, corporate speak for forced retirement. Let him make his move publicly? Exactly. We'll let Richard commit himself to defending Austin's fraudulent specifications in front of the entire board. Then we'll present evidence that destroys their credibility completely. I spent the weekend preparing. Eric provided copies of all surveillance logs and audio recordings Madison had collected. I compiled side-by-side comparisons of original specifications versus Austin's modifications for all 23 affected contract items. Most damaging was the recording of Richard and Austin planning to frame me for their specification violations. Monday morning, Richard seemed unusually confident. He spent the day meeting privately with board members, presumably building support for Austin's promotion. Madison shadowed me constantly, attending meetings I hadn't invited her to and taking notes on every conversation. Nathan, she approached me around 3 p.m. My father wants to see you in his office. He mentioned something about finalizing transition plans. I walked into Richard's office to find him with Austin and a man I didn't recognize wearing a Pentagon ID badge. Nathan, this is Inspector Williams from Pentagon Procurement Oversight. He has questions about our Blackwater contract specifications. My heart pounded, but I kept my expression neutral. This wasn't part of Patricia's plan. The audit wasn't supposed to start until after Tuesday's board meeting. Inspector Williams pulled out a folder. Mr. Bradley, we've received reports of potential specification irregularities in your Blackwater contract submissions. Several items don't match our original procurement requirements. Can you explain these discrepancies? I looked at the documents. They were Austin's modified specifications with my name listed as the reviewing engineer. Inspector, I never approved these specifications. These modifications violate both safety standards and contract requirements. Austin jumped in immediately. Nathan, we discussed these efficiency improvements in multiple engineering review meetings. You signed off on all optimization measures. That's completely false. I specifically documented why these modifications would compromise equipment integrity and soldier safety. Richard leaned forward with practiced concern. Inspector Williams, I believe we have a communication breakdown here. Nathan has been resistant to modernization efforts, and there seems to be confusion about which specifications represent our official position. Inspector Williams looked between us carefully. Who has final authority over engineering specifications in this company? Nathan is our senior engineering manager, Richard said smoothly. All technical decisions require his approval. Perfect trap. Either I accepted responsibility for Austin's dangerous modifications, or I appeared incompetent before a federal inspector. Richard thought he'd cornered me completely, but I'd spent 18 years learning how to handle pressure, starting with 8 years of Navy service under combat conditions. You don't survive military engineering without learning when to hold your ground. Inspector Williams, I'd like to request a formal review of all engineering documentation. I believe there have been unauthorized changes to approved specifications, and I have evidence that these changes were made without my knowledge or consent. Richard's confident expression flickered for just a moment. Nathan, I don't think that's necessary. We can resolve any misunderstandings internally. Actually, Inspector Williams said, given the nature of these contracts and the seriousness of these allegations, a formal review is exactly what's required. The real battle was about to begin. What followed was 3 hours of controlled interrogation. Inspector Williams secured all computers and documentation while federal agents interviewed employees individually. Richard maintained his calm executive demeanor, but I noticed Austin sweating through his expensive shirt. By 6 p.m., Inspector Williams had copies of every engineering report, email chain, and specification document from the past 6 months. More importantly, Eric had provided access to the surveillance logs and Madison's audio recordings, evidence that would either support our case or destroy it completely. Mr. Bradley, we'll need your complete cooperation during this investigation. Please prepare all original documentation for review by our technical team tomorrow. After the federal agents left, Richard closed his office door and turned to me with barely controlled anger. Nathan, you just made the biggest mistake of your career. This investigation will create problems for everyone, including you. The Pentagon doesn't appreciate contractors who can't manage their internal processes efficiently. The Pentagon appreciates contractors who don't commit fraud even less. You're walking a very dangerous line here. Austin is family. I protect my family by any means necessary, and I protect my professional integrity and the soldiers who depend on our equipment. That evening, Patricia called me at home. Nathan, the investigation is proceeding faster than expected. Inspector Williams contacted Pentagon Procurement directly. They're sending a full audit team tomorrow, and they want to interview you first thing in the morning. What about Richard's counterattack? He's already started. I received calls from 3 board members tonight asking about my confidence in your technical competence. Richard's planting seeds of doubt about your mental stability and professional judgment. I wasn't surprised. Character assassination was his standard operating procedure. Tuesday morning arrived with unseasonable rain. The Pentagon audit team consisted of 4 technical specialists and 2 criminal investigators. They set up in our main conference room while employees whispered nervously throughout the building. At 10 a.m., Richard called the emergency board meeting that would determine everyone's fate. Ladies and gentlemen, we're facing an unfortunate situation created by miscommunication and resistance to necessary modernization efforts. Richard stood at the head of the boardroom table, projecting confidence despite the federal investigation happening down the hall. Austin Thornfield has done exceptional work optimizing our processes and identifying cost savings across multiple contracts. Unfortunately, some senior staff have been resistant to these improvements. Austin beamed from his seat beside the executive team, still believing his father could control the narrative. Before we discuss Austin's promotion to engineering director, I want to address the federal investigation. This audit resulted from complaints by a disgruntled employee who disagreed with management decisions. Patricia spoke from across the table. Richard, are you referring to Nathan Bradley's technical concerns about specification violations? I'm referring to Nathan's inability to adapt to modern engineering practices and his attempts to undermine Austin's legitimate improvements. Those aren't improvements, I said, standing up. They're dangerous modifications that violate federal contract terms and safety requirements. I connected my tablet to the room's display system. I believe this evidence will clarify the actual situation. What I showed them was devastating. Side-by-side comparisons of original specifications versus Austin's modifications, material strength reductions, eliminated safety tests. compromised ballistic protection standards. Every change violated both contract requirements and basic engineering principles. These modifications were made without my approval and submitted to Pentagon procurement under my name as reviewing engineer. Austin jumped up. Those are preliminary efficiency studies. Nathan approved all final optimizations after our engineering reviews. Actually, I said, activating my phone's audio, that's not what you told your father. Austin's voice filled the room. Dad, what happens if the Pentagon asks technical questions I can't answer? Then Richard's unmistakable voice. Don't worry, Austin. I've already briefed them that Nathan has been resistant to efficiency improvements. If there are technical issues, we'll frame them as his failure to provide adequate support. The room went completely silent. Board members stared at Richard in shock. Those recordings are illegal and taken out of context, Richard said, his composure finally cracking. No, said a voice from the back of the room. They're evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. Inspector Williams walked in with 2 federal agents. We've completed our preliminary review. Mr. Thornfield, Mr. Austin Thornfield, and Ms. Madison. Thornfield, you're under arrest for conspiracy to defraud the United States government. What happened next was swift and decisive. Federal agents secured all company computers and phones. Richard and Austin were handcuffed and escorted out while Madison collapsed in her chair, finally understanding that Daddy couldn't protect her from federal prosecutors. Patricia approached me as the agents finished collecting evidence. The board will need immediate leadership for the engineering department. Are you interested in the position you should have had years ago? 3 months later, I'm sitting in what used to be Richard's office, reviewing specifications for upgraded ballistic testing equipment. The Blackwater contract was renegotiated with proper materials and realistic safety margins. Our engineering team expanded from 9 to 16 engineers, all hired based on competence rather than family connections. Richard pled guilty to federal fraud charges and received 4 years in federal prison plus $7.5 million in fines and restitution. Austin was banned from government contracting permanently and faced multiple civil lawsuits from affected military units. Madison lost her security clearance and accepted a plea deal for cooperation in exchange for probation. The real victory wasn't their punishment. It was rebuilding trust with Pentagon procurement and proving that experienced engineering judgment matters more than MBA cost optimization theories. Eric got promoted to Chief Information Officer and implemented comprehensive cybersecurity protocols. Patricia joined our board as chairman, ensuring proper executive oversight. Most importantly, we now hire veterans, community college graduates, and state university engineers who understand that military equipment isn't about profit margins. It's about bringing soldiers home alive. If you've dealt with workplace nepotism or corrupt management, document everything and find allies who value integrity over politics. Sometimes fighting a broken system means taking risks that privileged kids will never understand. Experience beats education when lives depend on your work. And sometimes doing what's right means standing up to people who think family connections matter more than professional competence. That's my story. Nathan Bradley, Senior Vice President of Engineering, Meridian Defense Solutions. Still here, still fighting for quality over shortcuts, still making sure our equipment works when it matters most.